Welcome to Carnival, everyone. So this year, Carnival in Brazil falls on the 17th, and me being of Portuguese heritage, I thought it would be fun to do one of Brazil's national dishes, that dish being feijoada. Feijoada has its roots in Portugal. It's one of my favorite dishes growing up. I absolutely love it. It just has super fond memories for me growing up with all the odd bits and ends that no one else at school was eating. I just fell in love with it. Feijoada, in the history of Brazil, came over with the Portuguese colonists. Obviously, colonization always has its issues. I think we have to acknowledge that. Of course, through colonization, food is spread. Feijoada is one of those dishes. Now, whether it be in Portugal or in Brazil, feijoada was always a dish for the poor, essentially, because it was made of basically beans, which in Portugal was either like red kidney beans or white beans that were readily available. And then it was made with basically all the odd cuts of meat that the upper echelon of folks didn't want to eat. You know, things like tripe, pig's feet, pig's tails, pork neck, beef neck, goat tails, chicken gizzards. All those things were readily found in feijoada in Portugal. When that dish was brought over into Brazil, dishes that are introduced into new colonies is a lot of times you can't have the ingredients that you had at home. So you kind of have to make do with what you got. And in this case, now meats were available, all sorts of meats, right? But again, the upper echelon got the good meats. So the meats were the same, essentially. You used all the odds and ends, the things that the poor people can afford. If you could afford meat, even. Because most people couldn't even afford meat at that time. So it was really the throwaways, if you will. Instead of red beans or white beans, they would use black beans. Fundamentally, the other things all kind of fell in line. Feijoada is one of those dishes that you can kind of put almost anything into that you have on hand. Now, I like to put some extra vegetables in mine. If I can sneak vegetables into something, it's a bonus, because I just love meat so much that I really need to up my vegetable intake. Traditionally, we would eat this as is, or with a side of rice. Obviously, bread, is always a staple. In Brazil, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but oftentimes this is served with some form of cassava or yuca, either in manioc flour over the top, or boiled cassava is also tradition, and rice, of course, can be used as well. It's an interesting, fun dish. I think almost every country has sort of a version of this poor person's meat and bean stew. Very filling. All in all, I think a wonderful dish, and it's really close to home for me. And again, with Carnival, the dance moves coming up, I think this is a perfect time to make a big pot of this. All right, here we go. So this is a dish that is made of a plethora of ingredients, and here we have some of the ones we're going to use in ours today. Now, when you do this, I like to make it a big pot full. This isn't something you're cooking for one. This is something you're cooking for a get-together, for your family. It does freeze beautifully, so keep that in mind. It is not meant for small portions. It is meant to feed the family. So very simply, down here we've got about 3 medium or 2 large diced onions. We got about 6 cloves of garlic sliced. We've got our black beans that have been soaked. For later, after about halfway through the cooking process, we're going to add this big cut up cabbage and these big cuts of carrots. Down on the end here, we've got some crushed tomatoes. We've got paprika, coriander, black pepper, And we've got some red wine. The wine is optional, but I think it adds a ton of beautiful flavor. Now for this one, for our meats, we've got, starting up top here, we've got smoked neck bones. You really want that unctuous smoky quality. It goes so well with beans. We got raw pig's feet that are cut up into about 2-inch pieces or so. We've got tripe. This is not honeycomb tripe. This is regular tripe. Honeycomb tripe being the more sought after. It is tremendously expensive now. I love it. This is half the price. It's not as beautiful, just because I do love that honeycomb quality that tripe has, but it does add delicious flavor. We've got a little bit of smoked sausage. I really wanted to add some morcilla sausage, but my local meat butcher did not have any. They got shorted on their shipment today, funny enough. You know, good Portuguese sausage on the drier side or on the Casedu side is usually a must here as well. And then back here we've got some chicken gizzards. Make sure these are nice and clean. This sometimes has a kind of a thick yellow skin on it that just needs to be pulled off. So you just want to give those a once over and just make sure they're all clean. And then one thing my butcher had today, which was awesome, is goat meat, like bone-in goat meat. I got about a pound or so of goat meat, some riblets in there. That'll be a fun, interesting addition to this dish. So this is everything. Again, you can make it your own, adding and subtracting whatever you want. So let's start it up. All right, so pretty simply, we've got our pot on pretty high of heat right now. We've got a big pot here. This is maybe even a 3.5 gallon pot. Now to start this, we are going to add a little bit of grapeseed oil. Now you can make this even more traditional and use palm kernel oil, I believe it's called. Not that easy to find. I'm sure you can get it at like Kalustein's here in the city. To this, we are going to add our onions and garlic, our spices, and again, this is coriander, black pepper, and a little paprika. All right, now you're just going to sweat these down. You're not looking for color. We're going to put some salt. You don't want to crush it with salt in the beginning, but you want to put about a 1/4 cup. Some of the additions to this do have salt, like the smoked neck bones and the sausage. We really kind of want to let those things start to develop before we just crush it with salt. However, you do want to make sure you have a good amount of salt in there. You're going to need it. All right, once you have everything nicely sweated down, you want to be careful because you don't want the spices to burn. So just be careful. But once everything's nice and sweated down, you're going to add about 3 cups of red wine to this. Now, to me, red wine is extremely important in something like this because it does have a tomato product in it. Now, whether that be tomato paste or the crushed tomatoes that we're going to put in, there's just a lot of flavors in tomato that are alcohol soluble. Whenever I do anything with tomato, I usually have some sort of alcohol in there. Now, we're going to bring this to a simmer, let it simmer for about a minute, and then we're going to add our tomato. Alright, so now to this, we're going to add our crushed tomatoes. This is just 1 large can of crushed tomatoes. If you don't have crushed tomato, 1 or 2 cans of tomato paste are a perfect swap out for something like this. As long as there's some good tomato product in there, that's all that matters. Now this you're going to let cook again for probably about 2 minutes, just to bring it down. And then we're going to start layering in our meats. That is looking good, smelling good. And now we're going to start layering our goods. Now I wouldn't say this has a particular order to it because we are going to stir it later on, but I do guess kind of prefer to put the bone-in items towards the bottom to start. So this is the pig's feet and the neck bones, dropping in. Then we're going to put in our chicken gizzards and our goat. Beautiful. Then we're going to put in our tripe and our sausage. And now we're just going to spread this out. And lastly, we're going to put in our black beans. Alright, that looks wonderful. Shake it up. Now we're going to top this off with water. We're going to add a little bit more water. We really want this to be about 4 inches above or at least the length of that spatula head above the beans, because this is going to cook for quite a long time, 2 to 3 hours almost, by the time to get those meats braised and everything super tender. And you're not really worried about overcooking the beans or anything, because it's kind of meant to be that stewy quality. You really want to have enough liquid in there. There you go, that's perfect. Just to the top. We're going to bring this to a boil, and once it comes up to a boil, we're going to drop it down to a simmer. We're going to simmer it for an hour, and we're going to add our vegetables in. All right, stay tuned. We've been simmering for about 45 minutes or so. Everything looks really delicious. Meats are getting there. Beans are starting to get nice and tender. So this is going to simmer for another about an hour and a half. What I did forget before is some bay leaf. We're going to add our carrots, and then we're going to add our cabbage. And again, you can add as many or as few vegetables to this as you want. I like to put vegetables because I just think getting as many veggies into this as possible really adds balance. We're gonna simmer this, like I said, for another hour, hour and a half, and we'll bring you back. I just upped the heat a little bit, and we're gonna let this simmer a little bit harder now for about 10 minutes just to reduce this liquid down a little bit and draw out a little bit of the bean starch. But all in all, we are in an absolutely beautiful place right now. So we're gonna let this go for just about 10 minutes. Seasoning is perfect. I just gave it a taste. And then look at this. Let's dig down in there, get from the bottom. Look at all those beautiful meaty pieces. We got a piece of pig's foot there. We got some smoked hog. We got the cabbage, black beans. Just absolutely stunning. Look at that. It's exactly what you're looking for right there. Can't go wrong. And there we have it, a nice big bowl of feijoada, which I then like to, because the meats are so rich and so densely flavored, I like to finish with a little bit of herb. In particularly, for me, I like to put a little bit of cilantro in there, but a little parsley is fine as well. You don't have to do this, but for me, it just adds that bit of freshness that I'm looking for. Look at that. So delicious. Give this a try at home. Use all the meats that you love and prefer, and I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. And there you have it, everyone. Feijoada in the Brazilian style. Again, there's so many different ways to make this delicious dish. Please make it at home. Make it yours. And again, you don't have to use the odds and ends. If you're a little squeamish about, say, pig's feet or tripe or something like that, man, feel free to use pork shoulder, beef stew meat, things like that, chicken thighs, like whatever. Make it yours. This is a dish that can be adapted to your taste. If you enjoyed this, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thanks, everyone. Peace.